Okay, so thank you all for joining the grant writing tips and office hour. And we are going to go ahead and get started. As Janet mentioned, we have Spanish interpretation available for today's webinar, and the English and Spanish will be available on all slides. To access the Spanish interpretation channel, please click the interpretation icon in your Zoom controls bar. If you don't see the option, you may need to click the three dots where it says more to use this feature. You can click Spanish and mute original audio to hear Spanish only. If you have trouble accessing the interpretation service or need any tech support, you can reach out to my colleague Leslie and we will help you out. So I'm going to put the instructions in the chat just so you are aware. Okay, we also have closed captioning available for the webinar. After finding the control in that more options, you can choose to hide or show captions using the CC icon. We also welcome your questions. To submit questions, please use the chat feature. We also have an FAQ doc that we'll be sharing at the end of the presentation. This is the agenda for today. We are going to provide a brief overview of the grant, including the background, the application process, and then we'll provide some grant writing tips and have time for Q&A. So if you participated in the kickoff webinar, it'll be some of the same information, but also it's going to include grant writing tips today. So starting off with the program overview, in 2024, Boulder County conducted a comprehensive review of climate justice best practices. This was informed by recommendations from external environmental justice consultants, Boulder County staff, and the Board of County Commissioners. A vision for a climate equity fund was developed. The intent of the fund is to expand access to climate-related funding for frontline communities and individuals disproportionately impacted by climate change. In July of this year, Boulder County Commissioners directed Boulder County to launch the Climate Equity Fund. The Climate Equity Fund is supported by $1 million each from the Sustainability Tax, the Boulder County General Fund, and the Gross Reservoir Settlement Fund. This fund will distribute up to $2.5 million in 2025. Who is eligible to lead and apply for grants? So organizations and applicants who are locally based, frontline and community-led, including nonprofit organizations, tribes and tribal entities, mutual aid networks, and neighborhood associations, such as mobile home parks, low-income housing, and Boulder Housing Partners are eligible to apply. Resident-led initiatives are also welcome to apply. Informal groups or coalitions without official nonprofit status or those without fiscal sponsorship are eligible to apply to Tier 1 only, and I'll talk more about the tiers later. And this is one of the few slides that doesn't have English and Spanish, so I'm going to switch over to the Spanish slide and go over who is ineligible to apply. So universities, municipalities, as well as county, state, and federal governments are not eligible to lead, as well as for-profit businesses. So these entities are welcome to partner with other lead organizations, but they aren't eligible to lead by themselves. And individuals applying as sole entities without collaborators are now not eligible to apply for this fund. So if you were thinking about installing solar panels or making other energy efficient improvements to your home, this fund wouldn't be a good fit for you. Next, we have the funding tiers. So we have two funding tiers. Tier 1 is the Community Roots Grants. This is more so geared towards informal groups or nonprofits or those organizations without nonprofit status or fiscal sponsorship. So although this tier is geared towards those groups who don't have a nonprofit status, nonprofits are still eligible to apply to Tier 1, but we would encourage you to look at Tier 2 as well. So for Tier 1, the amount ranges from $5,000 to $50,000, and they can go for 6 months to a year. And these are really geared towards early stage or smaller scale projects, including pilot program. And we hope to award up to 10 Tier 1 awards during this pilot cycle for 2025. And the same as before, I'm going to switch over to the next slide to go over the Tier 2, but in Spanish. Okay, so our Tier 2 grants, also known as Community Reach grants, are for applicants who have nonprofit status or who have a fiscal sponsorship. This is for $55,000 to $1 million, and these projects are for up to a year. These Tier 2 projects are for more established projects or startup initiatives that have already been developed. And these projects may have greater investment and can demonstrate the readiness to manage and scale impact and partnership. We hope to.
Oh, yeah.
We hope to award up to 5 Tier 2 awards in this pilot cycle. Okay, just going over a couple of project examples. This list is not meant to be exhaustive. It's not meant to provide any examples of projects that we'll definitely fund, but more so projects that are going to be eligible under this grant. So we have healing and cultural connection, art, storytelling and media, education and youth engagement, and a couple of examples that would fit under these categories include cultural resilience practices such as seed keeping or land stewardship, intergenerational projects that document environmental changes, and organizing peer-led education or advocacy on school campuses. And a couple of more examples include mutual aid, basic needs, and climate resilience, as well as land, air, water, and food systems. And a couple of examples that would fit under these categories include toolkits to help communities plan for heat waves and creek cleanups. And a couple of more projects examples, we have infrastructure, and this can include building improvements, including those that promote renewable energy, energy efficiency, climate adaptation, and community well-being, as well as zero waste and low carbon living. So this could look like low waste living workshops, including training on composting and workforce and economic justice. So solar installation or ecological restoration, workforce development. And I'm going to share where you can find more examples of eligible projects in the chat. Okay, so now we're heading to the grant application and selection process. So this shows the steps from applying to become a grantee to being awarded. So once you know that you're eligible, you can submit an application now until September 15th. And then once your application is submitted, we will screen the application to make sure all of the required documentation is there and to confirm eligibility. Once this is confirmed, your application will be scored by the Community Evaluation Committee, also known as the CEC. And using the evaluations from the CEC and recommendations, as well as input from JSI and Boulder County, we will put together a recommended funding slate, which will be approved by the Board of County Commissioners. And you can find the links to both tier applications here. Putting that in the chat as well. This is the scoring rubric. So the Community Evaluation Committee will be using a scoring rubric from 1 to 5. And you can kind of see the breakdown there. So if someone scores a 1, they were probably not responsive to the question, and they are likely not to be funded. A response that scores a 2 may not align with the goals to the fund, or if the applicant does not clearly describe how they'll complete a project. And the applicants that score predominantly 1s or 2s are, again, not likely to be funded. The CEC has not been chosen yet, so we are currently in the process of doing that. A response may score a 3 if it is aligned with the goals of the fund, but the evaluators identify significant flaws in the design or approach. Projects that score averages of 3s still may be funded, but they may require technical support. And applications that average scores of 4 or 5 are more likely to be recommended for funding. These applications will address environmental justice issues in a frontline community. They will demonstrate a meaningful community engagement, and they have the capacity to execute the project. Going over the weighted scoring rubric. So the evaluation committee will be using this rubric, and it means that not all of the sections are evaluated equally. So there are certain components that are considered more important than others. And this rubric kind of provides more information. So you can see there are 6 sections of the applications that are scored, and the applicant information section is not scored, but it is screened for eligibility. And for the tier 1 and the tier 2 applications, a budget is required, and I'll talk more about this. So that was all covered in the kickoff webinar, and now for the grant writing portion of the event today. I'm just going to switch over. Okay, so in the application, there are 5 sections which require a narrative response. Those include the organizational background, project team, and partnership section, project description and centering community, project location and benefit, and goals, anticipated outcomes, and measuring success, and the budget. So I'm going to go over each section and kind of give you tips for how to write to these sections and to help you strengthen your application. And continue to write any questions in the chat as well. Okay, starting off with the organizational background, project team, and partnerships. This section is an introduction to your organization and partnerships. It gives evaluators the chance to learn more about the type of work you do in Boulder County, how long you have worked in the area, and what the funding needs are. So this will, and if you apply with partners who will receive funds from the grant, a letter of commitment is also required for this section. We have a template for the letter of commitment, and I will go over this later in the presentation. So if you are writing this section, a couple of questions to consider include, are key personnel and past relevant projects well represented? Are partnerships mutually beneficial? And what future partnerships will you want to engage? Thank you, Emily, for including that link to the kickoff webinar. Going into our next section, we have project description and centering community. And so this section provides the heart of the proposal. It should clearly communicate the purpose of the work and demonstrate that the project is led by and centers frontline communities. Evaluators will be looking for whether the work is rooted in climate equity and reflects a grounded understanding of the community it serves. So when writing to this question, you can consider a couple of things. What is your project's core purpose in the community? How will you be working towards frontline community resiliency? And how does decision-making for this project reflect climate solutions and climate justice? When centering community, you can consider reviewing the spectrum of community engagement to ownership chart, which is a pathway to strengthen and transform community partnerships. Thriving, diverse, equitable communities are possible through deep participation especially by communities commonly excluded from power and decision-making. Leaders across sectors, including community-based organizations, local governments, and philanthropies, can use the spectrum to assess community engagement efforts to advance community-driven solutions. Community-based organizations play a critical role in cultivating community capacity to participate in and lead decision-making processes that meet community needs and maximize community strengths. Developmental stages allow us to recognize where we are at and set goals for where we can go together through conscious and collective practice, which is key to transforming systems. You can find this model and more information at facilitatingpower.com. And this resource is available in English and Spanish. And yes, a recording will be available after the presentation on the author website. I'm going to put this resource in the chat as well. Okay, getting back to the sections, the next section is project location and benefit. This section asks you to identify the geographic areas served by the project and who will benefit. A question to consider is, how does the area that your project will serve meet the definition of a frontline community? The definition we are using is communities that experience the most immediate and worst impacts of climate change and are most often communities of color, indigenous, and low income. The next section is goals, anticipated outcomes, and measuring success. This section is aspirational. You will be asked to describe 2 to 3 goals to help evaluators understand what your project's success will look like. So some questions to consider are, what are my objectives and what results do I expect to achieve? How can I clearly articulate my goals, objectives, and expected outcome? How would I define a successful project? So something else to consider is, what does success look like for the community that you're trying to serve with your project? But again, this is aspirational. So we do want feasible goals, but also think large in your goals. Okay, the next section, and I think the last section, is budget. A budget is required for both tier applications. We have a budget template that I'll review shortly. A budget illustrates how well an applicant understands the scale and purpose of the investment. It should reflect thoughtful planning and alignment with the project's scope and values. And some questions to consider when you are creating your budget is the budget clear, complete, and justified? Is it consistent with my project narrative? Does it support people-centered spending, including stipends and local vendors? And our values of sustainability reflected? So avoiding single-use items or excessive plastic. Another question is community compensation fair and visible? And these are some general tips for your application. We really want you to use accessible language. The CEC community members will be reviewing your application. So this isn't like, let me fix my video. This isn't academics reviewing your application, it's your community members. So we really want you to write to them. We would also like you to apply asset-based framing, really highlight community strengths and priorities, rather than just only focusing on needs and deficits. Keep objectives and activities focused on your proposed project goals. You don't need to include details that are not relevant to your project. Most of the sections only have 200 to 300 words max for tier 1. So you really have to keep it focused. Okay, I'm going to go over the templates really quickly, and I think answer one of your questions. Okay, so if you go over to the Boulder County website, on the application and eligibility information, you can see the resources here. You can see the letter of commitment template, as well as the budget template and the project timeline template. So these are going to download as a Word document, Excel, and looks like this is a Word document as well. I have the budget template here. I just uploaded it to Google Sheets. And you can see both tabs. One tab is English and one tab is in Spanish. We do recommend using this template just because we already have formulas in here. You don't want to change any of the formulas because if you see at the bottom here, we have the total and that is based on these other cells up here. So it's a pretty straightforward budget template. And then we also have the partner letter of commitment template. So this gives instructions here. It says the highlighted sections are for you to fill in. So here you would place your letterhead and contact information for the partner, and then you can just fill this in. If you scroll to the bottom, the template is also in Spanish. Okay, going back to the slide deck. So after reviewing the eligibility requirements and the application, you need to assess if this fund is a good fit. If not, there are other funding sources out there, including government grants, private foundations, and partnerships. Boulder County also has other grant programs that you may be interested in. You can also use online databases such as grants.gov, candid.org, or local philanthropy networks to search for grants. You should evaluate potential grants based on eligibility, funding, deadlines, reporting requirements, and topics. No matter what grant you apply for, you will likely need a compelling project description, detailing goals, and why your project is needed. We have some free resources to help you get started. The last two resources are available in English and Spanish. And again, these slides will be available after the presentation. And now we have time for questions and answers. And we'll also put the FAQ in the chat. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, it looks like we have a couple of questions. Okay. Like we answered a couple. A question we just received, can you please give some more information about how you define a partner that requires a letter of commitment? So if you are partnering with an organization or a coalition for the project specifically, so it doesn't have to be, if they're receiving money from this fund, then they are considered a partner. So that is when you would submit a letter of commitment. Leslie, Emily, do you have any additional response to that question?
No.
Okay. Sorry, I have a lot of screens open right now. Another question we have, are projects 1 year or can they be multi-year? So the funding timeline will be dependent on the tier. So tier 1, we said, is 6 months to 1 year. And then tier 2 is up to a year. So I think your projects can be beyond that, but for the funding of this grant, they have to be within that 1 year. Leslie, is there any questions that you want to answer aloud?
Well, the question about the use of the budget template, or if they can use their own budget format instead. So we have budget templates that they are recommended to use, but if the applicant decide to have a different format, we are okay with that.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, we had a question earlier. If someone has an initiative, but they only process an ITIN number, could they apply or do they have to have an LLC? And so we are consulting with the county attorneys to ensure compliance with all policies and requirements for the use of taxpayer funds. And I can respond with that in the chat as well, just so you have that available. Let's see.
So you don't know yet? Is that what you mean?
Yes, yes, we have to consult with the county attorneys for that question.
Yeah.
But we can get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll make a note to follow up with you. Okay. And also feel free to use the hand raise option and come off of mute if you would like to answer or ask your question that way. Marta, do you want to add some context to the question that you just submitted about mobile home parks?
Sure. Mobile home parks are such an interesting combo in that people own their own homes, they pay rent on the lots, and the people who own the mobile home park often don't actually live there, and there's all kinds of weirdnesses there. So what I'm trying, and I know that the mobile home owners can't apply for a grant, but my understanding is that the people who live there could. And so we're just trying to figure out what improvements home owners might be able to apply for that would benefit the whole community, or they have to just do stuff that's for their own homes.
Emily, Leslie, do you want to respond to that question?
Yeah, I could jump in on that, Marta. I think the answer is I don't have like a definitive answer on this specific example. I think we have laid out eligibility requirements. And if you believe that you fit the eligibility requirements, we would love to see your application. We don't want to be like the clearinghouse on these kind of informal calls. However, we haven't really seen the details of the plan. So, I mean, to me, what you're describing sounds, with the right application, certainly very eligible.
Thanks.
Thanks, Emily. Marta, did you have any other questions?
Tons, but I don't want to take up the time. Sorry, you guys. This is such a great program. I just want to be clear. So there's lots of rumors, lots of chisme in the communities that we work with about really what this fund is for. And because I know that we were in the library presentation, which was lots of helpful information, and it sounded like maybe it was for larger organizations this first time around, but then because of the grant writing requirements, but then other folks have heard that actually it's not for larger organizations, it's really for smaller community groups. But a lot of those folks have never written a grant, and so we're trying as quickly as possible to get grant writing skills going. And so anyway, so we just, and because it takes a lot of time, we just want to make sure that we're clear on really what it's for, so that there are right fits. And so we have all this theory here. That's great.
You're muted, Savannah.
Thank you, Leslie. So we have two different tiers. So it is for small startups. It could be for informal groups, as you can see with the tier 1 here, and that will be up to 10 awards. So the majority of the awards will go to kind of those smaller, maybe organizations who haven't had a ton of capacity in the past, or maybe they aren't used to writing grants. So it is for both, because you could see for tier 2, for kind of more established nonprofits. And this is going to be a higher funding amount, but those are up to 5 awards. So it's really both. And I hope that helped answer your question and resolve any of the achievement going around.
Nope, but thank you for trying. And the only reason I say that is because there's a big difference for a small group between 5,000 and 50,000. That's where a lot of the confusion is. It's not so much about the big tier ones, but the little, that's like a big amount of money, and it's a wonderful amount of money. But if it's really for startups, then and it's only 10 grants, that's like, anyway, so that's what we're just trying to figure out is because there's because we are very honored and lucky to be working, for example, with lots of community groups in mobile home communities. And there's lots of need and lots of great ideas. But we're trying to figure out, like, well, just really what's the best approach, telling people. And thanks to Emily and Andy are going to be doing a special workshop at Vista Village coming up. Just happened on Tuesday, which is really great, because we don't want to get everybody's hopes up, and we also want to make sure that people do apply if it looks like it's really a thing. But anyway, so it's just that difference between 5,000 and 50,000. It's like a big difference.
Yeah, it's pretty big for, again, small projects. Could be larger projects between that, and then it's really dependent on what the budget is submitted. So it doesn't have to be 5,000 or 50,000. It could be somewhere in between. But thank you, Marta, for your questions. I'm going to.
And Savannah, just a quick thing that's part of that, as part of the grant review committee, and I don't know if you guys know yet, but so if people submit a budget, is it a kind of all or nothing situation, or will the committee look at the budget and say, oh, okay, well, it looks like they want to do 5 blah blahs, but they could actually do 2, and that would be, and the budget could be cut, and that would enable the committee to give more grants? Or do you know what I mean? It's like, so the question is, to advise people, it's all or nothing. So go larger or go smaller, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so definitely don't request money outside of the tier range. But the evaluators will look both at the project narrative and the budget. So is this feasible? So I would say go for something that is attainable, something that is realistic for the project to succeed. So I would take all of that into consideration, and more information on the scoring rubric is available on the website as well.
But will people fund all or nothing? Or could you put that on the whatever it is, the guidelines? Just because people know, because that's a really important thing.
Yeah, Emily, you have your hand raised. You want to jump in?
Sorry, it took me a minute to find the mute button. Yeah, Marta, that's an important question that came up a lot during the design of the process. I'm not sure if Savannah mentioned it, but Ava, wait 1 second. Sorry, I'm looking for roly-polies with my daughter outside. Anyway, the community committee that designed the fund spent a lot of time thinking about this question. So Leslie, you may have an answer too. But what I heard that group say was their preference was an all or nothing model. They didn't like it when group budgets got cut potentially arbitrarily by the grant making committees. So I think that our operating principle for now is that these are all or nothing grants.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. I really appreciate that guidance.
Just one more thing that I will add is that in the grant manual that it's in the website and the Boulder County Climate Equity Fund, you can find the grant manual, and there you will find a section for what is allowable and what is not. So we have to follow county policies, and the county lawyer has developed this table that give you more idea about what it's allowable or not to be adding in a budget.
And I know Gina is also asking another question in Niarama as well. Really quick, just clarification statement that you just said, Emily. So if we were to apply and, we have 10 projects that we're gonna submit for that application, basically, if we don't get it, we will not get anything. Just making sure that I'm hearing that right. Or is it like, yeah, you may be eligible to fund 3 projects out of the 10?
Yeah, one thing I'll just clarify there is this is the first time the county is doing this. So we haven't imagined every possible scenario. So I'm not sure exactly how that would play out. I think, like I said, our operating principle is like, you will either get all of the money you ask for or none of the money you ask for, no matter how the projects are broken down.
Wow, that's scary. Thank you.
It is. It's really terrifying. Can we put in our grant? So if we can't get it all, could you give us X? I mean, I don't mean to be facetious, but I'm just saying it's terrifying.
Or Emily, I didn't know if you had anything else to add.
No, I hear you on that. I will take it back, and if I can have just a moment with our team to get more definitive guidance for you. I hear loud and clear that's an area of concern, and I think you're right to ask one way or another what the situation is. So I will take that back.
Thanks.
Thank you. Gina, I know you've had your hand raised for a while, so I'll pass it to you.
Thank you. So we are a long-standing nonprofit here, Sustainable Resilient Enrollment, and I was wondering if we can use any of the grant for general operating costs, or is it really focused on specific projects? Because we have a lot of projects, a lot of teams, a lot of advocacy work and education, and so I was just wondering if it's has to be like a specific project that you have a certain goal and there's a deliverable at the end of it, or if it's can be more just kind of supporting a nonprofit.
Yeah, so we ask that you include both project-specific line items, as well as if you do have general operating costs, those are allowable costs.
Does that include staff support as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. One of the questions we got in the chat is one of the issues with grants is that the process is not accessible due to the writing requirement. Many folks from marginalized groups are limited when it comes to writing. The process you have presented still has access issues. Are there any alternative ways of applying? And we do allow video and audio options available for tier 1. And Emily, just wanted to clarify, are those specific sections only, or do we have detail about that?
Well, I think you'll have to write your organizational details and your name and your contact information, but like all of the written portions of the application that Savannah just went through could be submitted through video.
Great. Any other questions that folks want to come off of mute when we have time? Gina, it looks like you raised your hand again.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to see, like, so could we have it be multiple projects for the grant? Like, because we are involved in a lot of different projects. So could it be more than one project? So we have like this project going over here and this one going over here. Yeah.
Leslie, I'm gonna hand that question to you.
Gina, could you repeat again the question, please?
Yeah. So I was just wondering if the grant application can include more than one project. So we are involved in lots of different projects, and so I was just wondering if it could include more than one project, or do we just need to focus on one project for this grant?
That's a really good question, Gina. I think that I will defer to you and your organization. So one thing that I will consider is if all those multiple projects are under the same umbrella in terms of impact allocation. So if that is the case, so probably you have you can pack all the projects together. It is not, and it's more like in different locations and also has different target population. So I will think about how you want to present that, the work, if you wanted to do it, and also what is the rationality behind that. So I think that there will be more a conversation around how you want to present your project.
Thank you.
Great, okay. Oh, one of the questions we got, the deadline for the application is pretty close. Can we send it in before for a review and recommendation, or would those be offered after applying? I will say that if you submit your application early on, we can definitely let you know if it's eligible. And if it's not, then you definitely have time to reapply and correct those issues. And yeah, is there anything else to add to that, Leslie or Emily?
No, you're right. Thank you so much.
Following up with the unanswered questions, we will be updating the FAQ document. So after we had the kickoff webinar, we had questions from that we didn't have in the FAQ before, then we added them, and we hope to do the same for today.
We will also email all the attendees those updated FAQs as well directly, so you don't have to dig through the county website.
See, we have just over 10 more minutes. Another question, will Colorado Sunshine laws or open meetings be in effect for the grants review process so that people can listen to the reviewers' comments about the grants as they are speaking? So my understanding is no. The reviewers will be individually scoring and then having comments, but it won't be like an open meeting. Emily, do you have any other anything to add to that question?
I think, Marta, first of all, I'm not an attorney, so we should get the attorneys on the call. But the open records laws applies to, the official board meetings. This is not an official board or commission. However, all of this documentation will be public. So all of like the scoring rubrics, etc., even the applications themselves are likely public, not in the sense that we'll post them online, but if somebody asked for them, we would produce them. Hope that answers your question.
Colorado Creative Industries has open records so that you can sit and listen for the grants review process, just so you know for the future, as a government agency. Who knew?
Okay.
Thanks, Emily.
Any other questions that we didn't answer? Gina?
Hi, sorry, I have a lot of questions. Could you go over the frontline communities again? Like what do you envision as the target of these projects?
Yeah, let me just open up. Okay, so this was one of the slides from the kickoff, and I think it'll help answer your question. So we have that definition from the EcoTrust frontline communities. So frontline communities are those that experience the most immediate and worst impacts of climate change and are most often communities of color, indigenous, and low income. And the eligible projects also must embody a commitment to climate action and primarily benefit Boulder County. So the definition is pretty open-ended. I think in your application, if you can speak to the specific community and how they are represented as being impacted by climate change, the evaluators are just trying to see that the project benefits frontline communities as well as is led by frontline communities. So if you're trying to propose a project that is going to benefit X community, but they're not involved at all in the planning or the active participation of the project, then the evaluators may not consider it a frontline community-led project. I hope that's helpful. I know it's not super specific, but if you can kind of detail how the community is being impacted, I think that'd be really helpful in your application. Okay. One question that we got, and I think we got in the last webinar, is can organizations submit more than one application? And I believe the answer is yes. Yeah, Leslie, did you want to say any more about the rationale for that?
Yeah, so we understand that Boulder County has it's a really small community with organizations that work in partnership or they work in specific areas. So really want to give the opportunity to everyone to apply as many times as they consider that it's important for their projects and also that meets the criteria of this funding opportunity.
But that doesn't mean that you're going to grant the money to every project, and you will just grant to one, correct?
Thank you, Andrea. That's a really good question. As we mentioned earlier, we are consulting with the county lawyers and with the program to have a very clear idea about what are those guardrails and what are those, how many times, how many projects can be funded under the same organization. So there's still more information that we will share it very soon.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we covered all of the submitted questions. Feel free to come off mute if we didn't answer your question, but we have a couple more minutes.
Well, we will hear from you after you figure out the questions that you're consulting with the lawyers. Would you email us directly, or are you going to be publicizing on the website?
Both. We will email all registered attendees for today's meeting with those follow-ups, and then we'll also post on our website.
Cool, thanks.
I will just say, just to set expectations, some of these questions are a little tricky, so it may take us a few days to get down to the bottom line and then get everything translated. But I would say, no more than a week from now, should you expect to wait.
Thanks, Emily. Gina?
How long will the review process be? Like after September 15th, when can we expect to hear back about whether we're successful or not?
Good question. I'm going to bring up the slide. So contracting will begin in November. So Leslie, is this correct that the beginning of October, mid-October, we'll have decisions? The recommendations will go to the Board of County Commissioners. And then soon after that, the applicants will be notified if they were awarded. I can pull up the exact dates.
Correct. That is, yeah. October will be the time that we're going to be finalizing the grant review process and elevating the recommendations to commissioners, so for them to approve it. And after that, we will start the contract with all the organizations that are going to be awarded.
Are you paying upfront? I don't remember. I'm sorry. I think you addressed that on the first online open forum. So are you gonna provide upfront funding or reimbursable?
Good question. So the awards will be deliverable based or cost reimbursable. So it's going to really be dependent on the individual specific project. We can't give like an overall answer right now. And your scope of work will really determine which of those two options it will be. It looks like most of the questions have been answered in the chat. How much funding is available in each tier? So again, we have the 10 for tier 1 and 5 for tier 2, and we don't have a breakdown per tier of exactly how much of each are going to be awarded of the $2.5 million. Marta, your comment, it will be really hard for small groups to have reimbursable grants. They don't have the money, so can things be paid up front with the benchmarks required? I think that would be more similar to the deliverable-based agreement. And so I think that would be the benchmarks. And that will, again, be dependent on the scope of work. A lot of good questions. Oh, and then I forgot I'm sharing my screen. I just wanted to give an overview of the timeline so you can see it visually. So again, the grant review process will start as soon as the application is closed, September 15th. We will then select awards for recommended for funding. The county will approve that funding slate, then we'll go under contract, and then projects will start the beginning of next year. Okay, I think we are going to wrap up. Thank you all for joining me on your weekday evening. I hope we were able to answer some of your questions. Look out for the updated resources on the website as well as emailed after this presentation. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening.